I'm a pretty straightforward guy, 33 years old, and up until a few days ago, I thought I was on track to marry the love of my life. We'd been engaged for about 9 months, but I recently learned the hard way that some people will mistake your kindness for weakness until it's way too late to take things back. We had a really solid 3-year run before everything blew up. We actually met through some mutual buddies at a concert, and back then, she was just incredible, smart, driven, and the kind of person who completely commanded any room she walked into. Last March, I took her back to the exact restaurant where we had our very first date and popped the question. Man, she went crazy for it. She posted it all over social media, shed some happy tears, and called her mom right from our dinner table. The big day was officially set for this coming May. We already had our deposits down on absolutely everything, from the venue and the caterer to a great photographer and the live band. Since her folks are pretty traditional, they insisted on picking up most of the tab. They just wanted their daughter to have the perfect wedding day. But things started going south around October. She just became completely distant. The affection stopped, and the constant nitpicking started. I'd whip up dinner, and she'd find a reason to point out whatever I did wrong. I'd organize a nice date night, and she'd find an excuse for why it wasn't good enough. Started out small, but it escalated fast. Out of nowhere, she started telling me I wasn't ambitious enough. When I asked her what that was supposed to mean, she told me I was too comfortable and didn't push myself. I told her I have a good, stable career, but she claimed she wanted more. That word, more, started appearing in every single conversation we had. She wanted a more exciting life, more success, just more of everything. I couldn't figure out what the hell had changed with the woman I fell in love with. We used to be happy, or at least I thought we were. Then, a couple of weeks before New Year's Eve, I found out she'd been getting close with a guy from her gym. Turns out he's some big-shot real estate developer who makes a ton of money and drives a luxury car. She tried to play it cool at first, casually mentioning that this guy was giving her some career advice. I told her that was nice, but then she started hitting the gym 5, then 6 days a week. She'd come home completely wired, talking nonstop about her workouts and constantly bringing him up. When I finally asked her straight up if she was interested in the guy, she got super defensive. She called me paranoid, told me I was insecure, and said she was allowed to have friends. I backed off and tried to convince myself I was just overreacting. That brings us to New Year's Eve. Her parents host this massive formal bash every single year for family, neighbors, and close friends. It's a whole tradition with champagne at midnight and a big speech from her dad. The ride over there on December 31st was completely silent. I tried to crack the ice and ask if she was doing all right, but she just brushed it off and said she was tired. I told her we could leave early if she wanted, but she insisted on staying because she needed to talk to her family about something. We got there around 8, and the house was decked out like always, string lights everywhere, a champagne fountain, and tons of people. I did the usual rounds, making small talk with folks I've known for years. Her mother even gave me a huge hug, asking how the wedding prep was going. I told her everything was locked in and we were just waiting on the RSVPs. But deep down, I didn't feel right. I had this sinking feeling that something was breaking, and I couldn't fix it. Meanwhile, my fiancée spent the entire evening huddled in a corner with her sister, having this incredibly intense conversation. Her sister looked completely shocked, shaking her head, while my fiancé just looked dead set on whatever she was planning. Around 11:30, her dad gathered everyone in the living room for his annual toast. He thanked everyone for coming, talked about the past year, and then raised his glass to us, saying how excited they were for the May wedding. Everyone raised their glass except her. She was just staring at the kitchen floor. Her dad noticed and asked if everything was all right. She took a deep breath, looked up, and said she needed to say something. The entire room went dead silent. She turned to face the crowd and said she'd been doing a lot of thinking about her life and her future, and then she dropped the bomb. She announced that her New Year's gift to herself was a separation. What would you do in this situation? Seriously, imagine standing there with 30 pairs of eyes burning into you like you're the bad guy, totally blindsided in front of a whole room of people. I didn't cause a scene. I just swallowed the rest of my champagne in one gulp, set the glass down smoothly on the table, looked her right in the eye, and said, "Congratulations." Her mother gasped, and my fiancée started stammering about needing space and postponing the wedding. I asked her if she was postponing it or canceling it, and she said she didn't know yet. Her dad tried to step in and suggest we talk about it privately, but I told him there was nothing left to discuss since she chose to make her decision very public. I pulled out my phone, walked out to the backyard, and let the freezing night air hit my face. I called my brother on the spot. When he answered, I told him exactly what happened and gave him clear instructions. File those prenup papers first thing after the holidays and lock down our joint accounts. I wasn't going to let her ruin me financially after blindsiding me like that. When I walked back inside, the countdown was hitting 0 and fireworks were going off in the distance, but the vibe in that room was completely ruined. My fiancée was crying on her mom's shoulder, and her dad was opening more champagne. I went straight to the closet, grabbed my heavy coat, and headed for the door. She saw me leaving and tried to tell me I didn't have to go tonight. I told her flat out that I'm not staying where I'm not wanted. I promised her I'd have all my stuff cleared out of our place by the weekend, told her to enjoy her separation, and walked out into the night. I got in my car and drove home alone. 8 o'clock the next morning, I was sitting there having a cup of coffee when the doorbell started buzzing. My brother went over to answer it. He came back into the kitchen and told me she was standing on the porch. I told him straight up to tell her to get lost, but he looked at me and said he thought I really needed to talk to her. I disagreed, but he begged me to just give her 5 minutes, promising he'd kick her out himself after that if I wanted him to. I let out a heavy sigh, got up, and walked over to the front door. Man, she looked completely wiped out. Her eyes were all bloodshot and red, and she was wearing a pair of old sweatpants and my old college hoodie. She asked if we could talk, and I told her she had exactly 5 minutes. When she asked if she could come inside, I told her absolutely not, and that she needed to say whatever she came to say right there on the porch. She took this real shaky breath and told me she made a mistake. A massive, awful mistake. She said she panicked, thought she wanted something else out of life, and realized she was completely wrong. I just stood there and said, "Okay." She looked at me confused and asked if that was it, wondering what else I wanted her to say. I asked her what she expected. For me to just forgive her and pretend we could start over? Because we couldn't. She asked why not, and I told her flat out it was because she completely shattered my trust and humiliated me in front of everyone. She picked the absolute most toxic way possible to tell me she wasn't happy. And now she expected me to just wipe the slate clean because she suddenly changed her mind? She started crying, telling me she didn't want me to forget it. She just wanted me to forgive it. I told her I couldn't do that. When she asked why, I told her the truth. Forgiveness takes trust, and I didn't trust a single word coming out of her mouth anymore. Then the waterworks really started. She kept saying she loved me and knew she screwed up, but I cut her off. I told her she didn't love me. She just loved the idea of having a safety net, and she hated the thought of being alone. If she actually loved me, she never would have been able to stand up in front of a whole room of people and proudly announce she was throwing me away. She claimed that wasn't fair, and I agreed that none of this was fair, but it was the honest truth. Then she brought up the wedding and all our plans. I told her to cancel it just like I said the night before. I told her to call the vendors, claw back whatever refunds she could get, and just move on. She started crying harder, saying she didn't want to move on, and I told her she probably should have thought about that on New Year's Eve. Right then, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her engagement ring. It was my grandmother's ring, the one I used to propose to her. She told me she wanted me to take it back. I took it from her and just stared at it. 3 generations of women in my family had worn that piece of jewelry, and now it was just a reminder of something that completely died in a living room on New Year's Eve. I just looked at her and said, "Thank you." She looked shocked, asking if that was really all I had to say. She asked me to promise I'd think about it, or that maybe in a few months we could give it another shot. She was practically begging me, but I didn't budge. I told her she made her choice, and now I was making mine. We were completely done. She stood there for another minute, just sobbing and waiting for me to crack and change my mind. I didn't. Eventually, she turned around, walked down the driveway to her car, and drove off. I walked back inside, and my brother was waiting in the kitchen. He told me that looked brutal, and I agreed. When he asked if I was doing all right, I told him I would be. I looked down at my grandmother's ring sitting in my hand. She wore that thing for 50 years. My mom wore it for 30. My fiancé managed to wear it for 9 months before throwing it all away. I put it back in its velvet box and locked it up. Maybe down the road, I'll give it to someone who actually means it when they say yes. Fast forward 3 months, and here's the final update. The wedding is officially dead in the water. We ended up losing about 15 grand in non-refundable deposits, which I split right down the middle with her parents. They insisted on paying their half even though I told them they didn't have to. Her mom actually sent me a card last week, apologizing for everything, telling me how much they missed me, and saying they'd always think of me as family. I didn't send a reply. It's not because I'm holding a grudge or anything. There's just really nothing left to say. As for my ex, she tried to get a hold of me twice, once through her sister and once through a buddy of ours, both times begging to just sit down and talk. I shut it down both times. I found out through the grapevine that she and that guy from the gym actually dated for about a month after we split up. Turns out, the big shot developer wasn't nearly as interested once she was single and available. He was the kind of guy who just liked the thrill of the chase, and the second the challenge was gone, he completely checked out. From what I hear, she's absolutely miserable now. Her sister told my brother, who ended up telling me. Apparently, she regrets the whole thing, wishes she could build a time machine, and knows she completely ruined the best thing she ever had going for her. A tiny, small part of me feels bad for her, but the rest of my brain instantly remembers standing in that crowded living room, surrounded by her family, while she publicly dumped me. I remember packing 3 years of my life into 14 cardboard boxes, and I remember sleeping on my brother's lumpy couch because I literally didn't have a roof over my head. These days, I'm living in my own apartment. It's a small, simple one-bedroom place, but it's completely mine. There are no shared bank accounts, no joint leases, and I don't have to lay awake at night wondering if the person I'm building a life with is going to suddenly decide I'm not good enough for them. I'm staying away from the dating scene for now. I'm just not ready, and I probably won't be for a while, but I'm totally fine with that. The ring is still sitting safely in its box. Maybe I'll hand it over to my brother if he ever decides to pop the question to his girlfriend, or maybe I'll keep it for a future niece or nephew. Either way, it's never going on the finger of someone who treats love like a backup plan. That quick, quiet phone call I made to my brother on New Year's night ended up saving me. It didn't just protect my wallet. It protected my head and my heart. That was the exact moment I realized I was worth a hell of a lot more than being someone's safe, boring fallback option while they went out searching for something better. When she reached into her coat pocket that night weeks later and handed over a ring she had no business wearing anymore, the look on her face showed she finally realized everything had shifted. But it wasn't about the jewelry, the frozen bank accounts, or the new apartment. It was me. I was the one who changed. I finally learned the hardest lesson of all. The worst thing you can ever do to yourself is let someone treat you like a casual option while you're treating them like your absolute priority.